Synthaholics. It's the Record Bible Podcast.
Welcome to Synthaholics. This is your host, David Duncan, and with me is...
One way or another, I'm going to find you.
Oh, no, he's going to get me.
Get you, Aaron O'Brien.
Oh, man.
Dave, I'm a big fan of chocolate.
Oh,
and,
yeah?
I got a chocolate, set where they have all these, different highfalutin chocolates that they make you like, oh, what's in the middle of this chocolate? And it's literally torture.
Life's like a box of chocolate.
Yeah, it's like, ugh, what's in there? Oh,
I only like the caramel ones.
Yeah, but every once in a while it's like, oh, that's good. But the other time it's like, oh, what kind of filling is this? Why did you put that together?
Why would you put banana cream into chocolate?
Yeah, they do weird shit. I don't know.
It doesn't have one of those strategy guides to which one you want to eat?
This one didn't, no.
Oh, man.
An older lady gave it to me for Christmas, and I forgot I had it, and I opened it up. I was like, ooh, chocolate. And I was like, ugh, chocolate.
So who would win in a fight over chocolate, you or Deanna?
Deanna would probably kick my ass. and she'd know how I'd feel about her right away. So.
She'd pick it up. You couldn't hide it from her.
I could not. So this week we are going back to one of our topics that we've been threatening to talk about again, is the Prime Directive. We talked about Prime Directive. We did a primer on the Prime Directive way back in episode 145. We kind of just went over the basics and kind of laid out what the Prime Directive is and what's about. So if you are kind of fuzzy on the Prime Directive, you might want to go back to 145 and just find out just the landscape of what that General Order Number 1 is.
General Order Number 1 with like, what was it, 47 suborders that never are explained ever?
Yeah, there's apparently a lot of different rules with it, but we don't know what those are. And I kind of wish that some fans would get out there and start writing those down.
Or the people currently working on Star Trek at CBS would add this to the Bible, or maybe get the Akutas or Larry Nemechek all together. And
I think you're just asking way too much of these people.
Let's get this in a Bible somewhere.
Yeah, so, but this episode, I think would be smart to go into each episode and just briefly talk about, did they break the Prime Directive? What was said, or what was done and said that could have broken it, or did they uphold it? And, just kind of pick it apart. We
did ask for people to reach out to us, and unfortunately no one reached out to us for more comments on the Prime Directive, so you're getting it anyway, guys.
You're getting it. Too bad. So
one way or another.
One way or another. So we are skipping Star Trek Enterprise for the only reason that the Prime Directive did not exist at this point. There are a couple examples that would have been violation of Prime Directive in Enterprise.
Yeah, the Federation didn't even exist, so I'm not sure why they're cited. I think the only reason they're cited in Enterprise is because Archer's looking out his windows we need to come up with some sort of directive that's very primal. I don't know what we call it.
Right.
To help us in these situations that are kind of hard to figure out.
Right, exactly. So
he strokes his non-existent beard.
Yeah, so
strokes the Paul's beard.
Ooh, that's weird.
Beaver beard. No.
Oh my God.
It's
So our first episode that we get a Prime Directive run into is the Star Trek episode Miri. Miri is a strange episode, in my opinion, mostly because it takes place that the Enterprise, this is the original series if I didn't state this already, the Enterprise runs into a planet that is a mirror planet of Earth.
Festival!
No, this is not.
No, it's not Festival?
This is not Return of the Argons.
No.
But Miri is a planet that's a mirror image of Earth, but it had been decimated by a disease that is killing all the adults. What makes it weird for that reason is that, one, I can't wrap my brain around it that there's an exact duplicate of Earth, thousands of light years away from Earth. So how did that happen, and what's up with that?
I don't know. I always thought that it would be kind of fun if alternate realities were so far away we just could never detect them. So there'd be like, in all 4 quadrants, there'd be like just different copies of Earth, and we can never get back to each other.
But the funny thing is that that is a theory in space, is that because space is infinite, that somewhere there is another Earth where there's an Aaron O'Brien and David Duncan recording a Synthaholics at this very moment, because the universe is infinite. As impossible as that sounds, that's a theory that's out there.
Yeah, that's a good theory. I like that theory. I hope they're talking about the Prime Directive too.
I do too. But so with the Miri episode, the real issue is I found this hard to decide if Kirk had broken the Prime Directive, because what had happened is when they beamed down, they found out soon that they were infected with the disease that killed all the adults, and the children had lived. But the children somehow, with this disease, they were able to extend their lives. I think their children lived like about 300 some years old, but they just never matured. And once you start slowly maturing into adulthood, that's when the disease takes place. While Bones and Spock are trying to find the cure to that disease, they're dealing with the children. And finally, when they do break through and cure that disease so they can leave the planet, they take the children with them. Hard to decide, because the society was pretty much on the verge of collapse anyways. And you're only talking about, maybe at most 40, 50 children. I forgot what was the exact amount that was led off the planet, but it would still be, if the Prime Directive means that you're supposed to allow the planet to go into extinction, let those people die. So I mean, technically Kirk broke it, but technically, because it's a sister Earth for some, or alternate Earth, I don't know. What is your feelings on that, Dave?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if they're an Earth that only has children on it, that is not spacefaring and not warp capable, just go oopsie daisy. According to the Prime Directive, yeah, they're breaking it because they interfered with a culture that doesn't have warp capabilities, which is, that's the thing we talked about last time when we talked about the Prime Directive and how confusing it is, because the Prime Directive is two, apples and oranges things. It's like, dealing with advanced civilizations and dealing with non-advanced civilizations, and they're kind of like mixed together in the same bag. And I'm like, these should be separate orders, because it makes things a whole lot more clear. Because if it's an advanced civilization, it's more like a foreign relation issue. When they're not advanced, it's like, well, we shouldn't get near that because we don't want to scare them and freak them out because we're aliens.
Right.
So that's one of the things we talked about a lot last time. So I mean, looking at it, they're breaking it both ways, technically. But also, like we said, back in TOS era, if it's to save lives, the Prime Directive kind of just flies out the window if they can save lives.
Yeah, sometimes until they don't. I did misspeak just a second ago. I guess the Enterprise left a medical team in charge of the children when they would receive more help in time to the planet Miri. But the real issue, more than anything, is that if this is a duplicate Earth and these are technically humans, what do
are we responsible for them? Yeah,
and even if, let's say, we cured all those kids, and they're obviously McCoy found the cure to the vaccine to the disease. There's not enough kids to repopulate that planet.
Yeah,
the planet is technically, I mean, it was supposed to be sometime in the 1930s, 40s when that planet was,
decimated.
Was falling apart from the disease. But there's no way they're going to pick up from where they were before. That's technology wise. So
yeah, that's really difficult to. I don't know.
That's where I'm mixed at it. It doesn't totally make a complete Prime Directive break, but it's definitely fuzzy. I would say it's almost a break, but it's so that the society was so falling apart that possibly it wasn't.
I mean, but it's like. Are you considering the spirit of the law or the letter of the law? But the letter of the law, they broke it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And that's the thing with the Prime Directive all over the place. It's like, are you looking at the spirit, or are you looking at the letter?
And because it's a mirror image of Earth.
Why do we never see Miri again? We could have new New York.
I know. I don't understand. It's a weird
New Orleans.
Yeah, maybe there's more problems on that planet than we knew.
Oh, that'd be great. It's like in Discovery, they're like, oh man, Earth's gonna put. You've got Miri. You can everyone go move to Miri. Have a new center of the Federation, wherever that is.
They haven't discovered that quite yet.
Yeah, I know, but a couple of years, they can rebuild.
10, 11 years. Next episode we have is the Return of the Archeons.
Festival.
Yeah, this is the festival.
Sorry.
This is the Purge planet that we talked about before. So, the starship Archeon disappeared 100 years on this planet Beta 3, and basically a computer named Landru is running this planet, and basically they've got this very strict way of acting on the planet, and it's caused a stagnation on their planet. They can't. They are not advancing. Kirk goes in and destroys the computer Landru,
which is why William Shatner should never ever advertise for computers.
Yeah, but as we talked, Kirk did like to destroy his computers in his day.
So was Landru built by the populace, or was it put there by somebody else?
They were put there by the starship. This is from the starship Archeon. The Archeon seemed like this was I don't know if it was pre-Federation, but it was about 100 years before Kirk, so it might have been Federation at the time, but for whatever reason, when that crew landed on it, they set up this computer to run the planet.
Huh.
And I wonder
if he was Archer's friend.
I don't know, but so this one, Kirk destroying Landru. Again, I'm a little mixed on this because
Kirk destroying Landru is not breaking the Prime Directive because the ship that put it there broke the Prime Directive. So he's fixing the original break.
But do we know that the Prime Directive applied to the Archeon? I mean, that's the part we don't know. Was Archeon part of the Federation, or was it just like a space cruiser that crashed and they just set up shop there on planet?
Well, yeah. I mean, if it's during 100 years ago, it would be during Archer's time. So Archer's time probably didn't exist. I mean, it could have been existing, but maybe this freighter wasn't. The people who ran the Archeon just weren't aware that it was ratified and put into law. Who knows? But 100 years ago, it's definitely questionable if it's breaking the Prime Directive. But whether or not it broke the Prime Directive at the time, it breaks the Prime Directive now, having some old Earth technology running the show.
Right, exactly.
So I would say Kirk destroying Landru would be, righting a wrong that Earth had done in the past. So he's trying to, course correct back to Prime Directive.
Yeah. And that was his idea behind it, was that Kirk was, if he destroyed the computer, the society would start taking place as it naturally would and would move forward. I don't disagrry with Kirk, but then again, again, we're looking at the letter of the spirit of the law, because also, even though he's course correcting, he's never covert enough to not make himself known. So he's doing a double duty. He's trying to fix it, but he's breaking it all the time. True.
He's doing both at the same time.
Yeah, it is definitely a troubling one, just because that Landru, would you consider Landru part of the society, even though the Archeon crashed on it and they made it part of their own, or is it just a foreign element that needed to be extracted? So
I definitely believe it would need to be, it's a foreign, that had to be, if it's an old Earth computer that was on a, pre-NX or post-NX 01 ship, I mean, that's, it interfered with that culture's whole way of life. It created a new one, and one for the worse. So you gotta get rid of it.
Gotta get rid of the purge.
Did someone accidentally drop Donald Trump onto our planet? Can someone come fix that wrong?
All right. Next we got is the Taste of Armageddon. We covered this some time back, and this was an interesting.
Natalie
discussion.
Schlittman has a taste for Armageddon.
Yes, she does. And this is where Kirk again destroys another computer that is the computer that conducts the simulations of their warfare. So instead of having a real warfare, they just go into disintegration booths instead. And they said, "Hey, Dave, you've been picked for disintegration. You're a casualty of war, and since your lottery number came up, you had to go into disintegration booth and sacrifice yourself."
Do we get a conjugal visit first?
I don't know. It's all according how long you had till you have to report to the disintegration chambers.
If there's a bunch of ladies that are consenting that are also going to the disintegration booth, can we just make it mutual?
They just have like an orgy room outside of the disintegration
Exactly.
room.
It's like they let the orgy happen for like an hour or two, then they turn on the disintegrator. You die happy.
There you go. Right. Exactly.
Well,
so
the thing is with this one is that they were sent specifically by the Federation because they had the diplomat there specifically to
Ambassador Fox. Yes, or
Fox Mulder.
Yeah, Fox Mulder. So Starfleet had to made diplomatic arrangements to meet the people there of MNR 7, and
well, see, this is where the Prime Directive, like as you know, like we were saying earlier, as a twofold. Having two things in the one Prime Directive is where it's a nightmare because they're not breaking the Prime Directive in the way of interfering with other advanced species because the advanced species already knew about them and they were there to make peace.
And they are spacefaring because they do talk about ships going back and forth between the two civilizations that are at war with each other.
So they're not breaking the Prime Directive in that sense. They're breaking the Prime Directive in the sense that they're interfering with how they do politics. So this is a foreign relation issue, which is why the Prime Directive needs to be retconned almost to split those two up because that is going to be infuriating going back and forth between. So which one are they breaking? They're breaking like Part B of the Prime Directive or Part A of the Prime Directive?
Well, and the other thing is that the Starfleet sent the Enterprise exactly to make contact and talk to these people. So they knew that these people were hostile towards outside interference already. And so whatever the reason was to do that, we don't know. That was never explained in the episode. But they definitely wanted people to get involved, so Kirk got himself involved. So
no for breaking Part 1 of the Prime Directive, kind of yes for breaking Part 2 of the Prime Directive, because he took matters into his own hands instead of letting negotiations work through smoothly. But they weren't going to work through smoothly, so he was going to invoke Order 24, which I want to know if Order 24 happened before or after Discovery was a thing. I want to know because
very interested in that.
Because Order 24 would have given them plenty of reason to blow up Kronos.
You just cannot wait to get back into blowing up planets.
Well, it's hilarious. It's hilarious that this is there. It's in canon. It comes up at least. I think it comes up more than once.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I want to know when this order was put in, before Discovery or after Discovery. I need to know.
So we move out of A Taste of Armageddon to Errand of Mercy. This one's an interesting one, too, because it has a twist in the end of this episode. But the Enterprise is ordered, obviously, to this planet called Organia, where the Klingons are there, and they're supposed to protect this planet. But the natives,
Organia.
That's their national.
Are you friends with the Pavins too?
I know. You'd think so, right? So that's a good song. You should record that. So here we have this interesting situation where there's this war brewing between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. And the Organia...
The 5-second war.
Is like these... They're these godlike creatures, but at first they just masquerade as these simple, like almost Bronze Age type of society. They're almost like they come right out of like the...
King Arthur.
Yeah. I was thinking more like Bible times or something like that. They're very simple. There's a very simple time where they're wheeled carts and horses and stuff.
Put them on the cart. I'm not dead yet.
But unfortunately, what they didn't realize is that when the Klingons were super violent, but the Organians didn't seem to really worry about it, and they were so peaceful. They're like, we don't care.
It's fine. And Kirk's like, they're gonna fuck you up. Don't let them. Let us help you.
These people are gonna fuck you up, man. And they're like,
they have 2 penises. They are not gentle.
So the interesting thing is that while Kirk does involve himself, and the Federation involves himself with this planet, they are definitely in violation of the Prime Directive, but it was under the orders of the Federation. So what do you do there?
I can't really call this a violation of the Prime Directive if the Federation Council said go there. Second of all, they're Q-ish godlike beings.
Unbeknownst to everyone before this all started, that they are like Q-like creatures, and they reveal themselves at the very end, and they're like, they basically stop everyone from the war from happening.
Yeah, and so I can't call this a violation of the Prime Directive because, I mean, they're well beyond the Klingons or the Federation as far as ability, shipfaring. They're God. They don't need ships because they are godlike.
Excuse me, what does God need?
What does God need with a starship?
Kirk learned that line in this mission.
This is exactly where Kirk learned that. Exactly.
But it is an interesting episode because it seems like the Prime Directive was thrown out for the strategic use of this planet and to get that planet under Federation control.
And the funny thing is, they do mention Organia in Discovery, like just real brief.
Yeah, do they?
Yeah, like Lorca's like, this is near Organia. What's going on with that? They never expounded upon it. I was like, huh.
But the fact that they're these godlike creatures, kind of makes it a wash in the end. But beforehand, before you get the last 10 minutes of the episode, the Federation's in clear violation, and Kirk is just running wild, having his fight on the planet with the Klingons, and just enjoying himself. So,
but I mean, like, is the Prime Directive just for captains, or is like or if the Federation gives the order, then the Prime Directive doesn't matter anymore?
See, I would think the Prime Directive just like is an overall rule, general rule number one. It's just over everything. So I don't know.
I feel like the Prime Directive is like 101 for ship captains and ship crews and how they do first contact or not. Because it's all about like, are they spacefaring or not? Did they run into you or not? If they ran into you in space, then you can reveal yourself because, I mean, that's what you're there to do. You're there to meet new people. That's what we were like yelling about the last time we talked about this. Is like the Prime Directive seems so restrictive because the mantra of Star Trek is to boldly go where no man has gone before and to seek out new life and new civilizations. But only if they're spacefaring.
Yes, right. And when they get warp capable, exactly.
So it's weird.
So I would call this a mix as well. I mean, it's almost close to a no. I mean, nobody on the ship technically broke that Prime Directive because they were given the rules to do that. I mean, to interfere in this planet. And in the end, the Organians were, like you said, Q-like, godlike creatures. So.
Yeah, and I would say if it came from Federation High Council, I would say it's not a break of the Prime Directive because it wasn't Kirk's choice. It's
not on Kirk's shoulders.
He didn't break the Prime Directive, so the Enterprise didn't break the. So I wouldn't put this on Kirk's shoulders. If the Prime Directive applies to the Federation as a whole from on high, then why do they even keep it if they're going to tell people their captains to break it? So I feel like the Federation kind of has their own set of rules to a point, and then the captains are supposed to follow like more strict rules.
Right, exactly. So our next episode we have is Friday's Child, and this is an interesting episode going back to the conflict with the Klingons. This is the Enterprise becomes with this planet called Capella 4, where the Klingons want mining rights, and so they're kind of jockeying to the people of power of this planet. During this time, Kirk saves the life of an unborn king. By saving people from murdering this pregnant woman. So just by Kirk stopping that murder, during this, he has broken the Prime Directive. Whether he's working out of his own humanity for, not letting a pregnant woman be killed.
So the Klingons are there, right?
The Klingons are there, right.
So Prime Directive doesn't matter anymore because another race has interfered. They're aliens.
Not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. That doesn't mean the Prime Directive doesn't apply to the Federation. It's just the Klingons don't choose to observe it.
Well, I mean, I'm sure the Klingons don't have a Prime Directive. Their Prime Directive is conquer and take and destroy, and glory to the Empire. But I mean, since the Klingons have been mortal enemies of the Federation for the past 10 years, maybe. I can see the Prime Directive taking a back seat to, thrall to the Klingons at any point you can,
Right.
So I mean, it's one thing to walk to a planet, so we can warp drive to a planet that's Stone Age, or King Arthur times, and be like, hey, we're from space, what's up? But it's a whole other thing to see a planet like that that's being ravaged by your enemy.
Sure.
And then you're taking responsibility for your enemy being an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, and we're back into Errand of Mercy territory before the Organians reveal themselves to be godlike creatures. Here, in Friday's Child, the race here, they don't really. Obviously they're humanoid. They're not gods. Have Capella 4, but they are enticed by the idea that the Klingons would want to use their planet for mining. It's a strategic planet, basically. That's all it comes down to, and that they can use that to their benefit. The Klingons aren't saying they're going to annex the planet and take over it. They're just going to use it to extract their minerals. And like I said, the fact that Kirk saves this woman from being killed. Her son will become king, or I think they're called Tyr. The Tyr is the king or whatever emperor of that planet. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have a hard time calling that a Prime Directive break because there's outlying circumstances. You're not, because the whole deal with the Prime Directive is don't show yourselves to people who, don't understand there's spacefaring, you don't want to freak out these people who aren't ready. Well, they've already been freaked out. I mean, whether or not Klingons follow the Prime Directive, their knowledge of the universe as a whole has already been shattered. So I don't feel like the Prime Directive would even matter at that point, as far as the non-interference, because they've already been interfered with by a third party.
Right.
And then the third party is your enemy, and you're trying to thrall through your enemy at any chance you can get. So,
of course, but obviously by changing who the unborn child would be as king of that planet, by Kirk stopping that murder, he has mixed himself into the politics of that planet. So,
yeah, and then, like I said, it's like they violate Part A or Part B. I guess they violated Part B. By interfering with public, relations, but is it if you're saving her from a Klingon?
Well, this was actually I don't believe the Klingons were trying to kill her. It was fellow Capellans or whatever you want to call them.
Oh, okay. So that would be violation of Part B of the Prime Directive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, Kirk's just acting on his humanity, but it's wartime, and he shouldn't be down there anyways, but he is, and he has to make a rash decision to save somebody, and he shouldn't have. That kid could have turned out to be anybody. Could have just turned out to be a pauper, but this kid is slated to be king.
Yeah.
So I would say that's definitely a yes on the Kirk corner of breaking the Prime Directive. So good work, Kirk.
Yeah, yes to Part B, but he wouldn't have been there at all if it weren't for the Klingons.
So this is for Friday's Child. I'm mixing it down as a definite yes that Kirk had violated the Prime Directive. The other ones I'm giving kind of a mixed, because there's all sorts of mitigating circumstances that wouldn't put it completely on Kirk. Not saying that Kirk isn't somewhat at fault, but the fact that he's there makes it a little weird. So
yeah, but it's just I just feel like it's a hard one because like if the Klingons weren't there, he wouldn't be there.
Sure, of course, but he shouldn't have allowed and technically he should have allowed those natives to kill that woman.
He can't let a pretty broad die.
No, she wasn't that nice though, by the way. So she was kind of nasty.
He hadn't taken a dick to her yet. Make her nice.
Yeah, right. The next episode is the Apple. This is where Kirk destroys the computer Vol, which is controlling the orange Donald Trump type people.
Donald Trump planet people, yes.
This is a definite Kirk breaking the Prime Directive, and there's even a discussion between Kirk and Spock at just almost before they go down and try to destroy Vol, that Kirk is like, these people are in stagnation, they're not going anywhere, this Vol's controlling them, making them do all the things necessary for their survival, but they aren't doing anything innovative, they're just kind of being simpleton children.
Well, I kind of feel like it's the same thing as Return of the Archons. He's just letting the race work for themselves instead of work for this weird computer that shouldn't be there.
Right, and this is, as we talked and back in our first episode, episode 45 of Prime Directive. This is the cargo cult kind of thing.
Yeah,
that a computer has been set up as a god, and this machine is revered by the primitives, and they kind of just feed it to keep on existing. And because of that, they don't have to do anything to keep themselves alive. They don't have to innovate. They don't have to do anything new or come up with different ideas or different technologies, because Vol does it all for them.
Kind of reminds me of the Time Machine.
You mean the Time Machine?
H.G. Wells.
Oh, okay.
Like, because they had like the computer and the weird things that fed all the people on the the surface.
Right. The Morlocks, and I forgot the other of them. The people lived up above.
The Edo. No.
Yes, but
might as well have been Edo, right?
So this is definitely Kirk just tossed aside the Prime Directive. Kind of weird that this is such a high priority, and he's like, "Fuck this." He's
like, "Oh, I'm just doing what I did in Return of the Archons. It's fine."
It is, and at the very end, the native people are like, what will we do for procreation, and what will we do? And like Kirk goes, "You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out." It's like, Kirk would have been like, "I'll show you. Where's your prettiest woman? Oh, where's your three prettiest women?" So interesting to say the least. That Kirk would throw that away. Here, the next episode is, I find this one to be a wash, but I'm interested in your take on it, is Mirror Mirror. So we get their first Mirror Universe episode ever aired. And because they went into this alternate universe and they infused their ideas with a Mirror Spock, that it does change that universe. So is this technically a Prime Directive being broken here? I mean, how do you feel about that? If we got a mirror episode in TNG, that was cool. And if the Deep Space Nine mirror universe didn't turn the humans into like slaves and stuff like that, I would say no. It's not a violation of Prime Directive, but I really didn't like how everything went in the mirror universe in Deep Space Nine because of what happened with Spock. So because of that, I'm going to say this is most definitely a break of the Prime Directive, because they screwed up the mirror universe and made it not as cool.
You just don't like that they messed up the mirror universe.
Well, it doesn't make any sense. Like the mirror universe is fun, but it's hard to wrap your head around it when the Federation exists. Mm-hmm. Because we talked about this in our Discovery episodes, how it's fun, but having the ship called the Discovery and having the ship called like the Shinzu, and they should have been called the Sungzu, the things like that. Like, it just doesn't make sense where things are just lined up so perfectly in the mirror universe, and it makes less sense in the Deep Space Nine episodes because the Federation, there's no Terran Empire anymore, and so that all the humans end up on Deep Space Nine exactly like they are, and is even further fetched than what it would have been if the Terran Empire was still going. You know what I mean?
Right.
I feel like I feel that plot change made everything that happened made less sense. I mean, they were fun episodes, but I feel like Kirk broke the Prime Directive, making Spock change his mind, and I don't even know. Oh man, I don't like how they changed out in Deep Space Nine, but
okay,
they're fun episodes.
Sure, but let's set aside what happens, the outcome. So you think Kirk appealing to Spock's logic and basically saying this is all stupid, you can't keep running things this way. This is what kind of destroyed. I mean, this is a violation of. Here we go again, because we're in the same territory that this is technically it's an alternate universe, and it's a different society. But it's technically their society, but just in a different, skewed differently.
Yeah, he's totally interfering with another culture.
Okay, so if that's the case with the Miri, going back to the Miri episode, I mean, here we have a duplicate planet of Earth that was decimated. Then he should have let all those kids just, die.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's just
let them die.
But I mean, like I was saying, what I was saying at the Mary episode anyway. They shouldn't have gone down anyway if there was no spacefaring thing. I mean, like they had no business going down anyway. Like sure. That was 100% violation of the Prime Directive because they were, they had no space technology and they just, hey, look, this looks like Earth. Let's check it out. Just because, hey, it looks like Earth.
Right.
I mean, sure, maybe they have responsibility. But yes and no. It's that one's like sort of a mix, but I would lean toward more yes, breaking the Prime Directive because they didn't even have any spaceships, or warp capable ships. So that should be like a skip over. And
then what about Mirror Universe or with Mirror? I mean, obviously they're warp capable at this point.
Well, yeah, but then you're breaking Part B of the Prime Directive by interfering with public relations. You're changing how the whole culture functions.
Right.
I mean, the whole thing with Discovery is they're saying it's non-sustainable. But, I mean, it was sustainable until Spock kind of took it over and, hey, look, let's be nice to people. And that didn't work. That didn't work for them because they're not programmed to be nice. They're programmed to be assholes.
Gotcha.
And so, I mean, sure, the Federation couldn't function like that, but the Federation isn't the Mirror Universe.
Right.
And so, I mean, sure. I mean, the thing is, Giorgio said that they've run like this for generations. So, I mean, it's a successful system for them. Sure, It sucks and people get killed all the time because everyone's assholes and everyone's vying for power, but it worked.
Right.
And it's worked for thousands of years. And then since Kirk threw that wrench in it, it stopped working when people tried to be nice.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I guess I'm a little agree with you on this. I mean, they're getting involved with their society, and they're changing it. So
yeah, and that's the thing. Like I keep saying with the Prime Directive, it's really hard because it's like are they spacefaring and then public and then just general public relations. These should be two separate rules, but they're rolled into one. So it's like they kind of break it on this, but they kind of don't on this. You know what I mean? Like they break Part A, but they don't break Part B, or sometimes they break both parts.
Right.
And this part, since they're already spacefaring, that doesn't matter. They're changing. They're interfering with the politics. They're interfering with how they run their culture.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, the next episode we have here is Bread and Circuses. Now, this is an interesting episode. This is an Enterprise gets to this planet that resembles the Roman Empire in the 20th century. And so it's like it's the Roman Empire extended into a time where there's TV and
cars and stuff,
and all the things that we have now, but it's all run under Roman rule.
Lots of bathhouses and orgies. It sounds like a great place to live.
So the difference on this planet, of course, is that the USS Beagle had crash landed on this planet as a merchant ship, and it was missing for 6 years. And the Captain Merrick had interfered with the society, so that was the Beagle's captain. And basically, what happens is he sets himself up with his advanced knowledge of society to take advantage of things. So that's the idea behind it. So when Kirk and Spock and McCoy are kind of captured, they are definitely under duty that they are in the Prime Directive, and they cannot interfere with the society whatsoever. And although they've been imprisoned and they're forced to fight in these gladiator fights, they're televised. They decide that while they escape and everything, they definitely make sure they have not broken the Prime Directive. So this is one time where Kirk definitely does not break the Prime Directive whatsoever.
But
so
he beamed down to a planet that doesn't have spaceships and warp drive, so he broke the Prime Directive.
True, but they were looking for the survivors of the USS Beagle, or the SS Beagle, sorry, and that just it is what it is. I mean, they were trying to basically get rid of all those people that were on the planet and save them, and unfortunately, those people had engineered the planet to help themselves. They basically got involved in their politics and made themselves into
Caesars.
I don't think it was everyone. I mean, there was people who put themselves next to Caesar and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
Senate, fun stuff.
So it was interesting. Interesting take, but it was definitely it was not.
It was not like the Part B breaking of the Prime Directive.
It was technically. I mean, other than them just being on the planet, they didn't reveal themselves that they were from outer space. In fact, even the people from the SS Beagle weren't never revealed them to the public. Only the people high up knew that they were from outer space. So
yeah.
So I mean, it's a little mixed there, but the Prime Directive being broken, that the people in power knew that the Enterprise was up there, but Kirk and crew did their best not to break.
But then again, if they were sent there by the Federation, then if that was their orders, then that's kind of not breaking the Prime Directive. And if they didn't make themselves known, I would kind of give this a wash.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed wash there. It's I
wouldn't say it's a hard break. Like to be consistent, if this is orders given to them, not just them happening upon the planet. Orders coming down means you ignore your regular rules. You follow your orders first. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'd give this one more a wash.
And it's definitely Kirk did his best not to break it. Unlike the Apple, and he destroys the computer Veil, he definitely says, I'm not getting involved in this. So maybe he realizes far more complex than that. So
yeah.
But an interesting episode, to say the least. The next episode we have is a piece of the action. This is the gangster one.
Yeah, see?
This is an interesting episode, too, mostly because this planet, this Sigma Iota 2, is a remote planet that had been visited by the Horizon back in 2168, before the establishment of the Prime Directive.
The Horizon. Oh no. So yeah, there was a Star Trek Phantom Horizon. I don't think it dealt with this per se. I don't remember everything about the found film, but I just think it was interesting that they did have a fan film called Horizon. I'm like, I wonder if the second film would have been. Since they were going to make a second one, but they couldn't because of the Star Trek Axanar lawsuit that happened. They were just kind of said, no, you probably shouldn't pursue a second one. So, I wonder if the second one would have kind of gotten into dealing with this, maybe.
It's interesting. So the Horizon left behind them a book called, they called it This Book, and it's the Chicago Mobs of the 20s. And they based their whole society off it. So they used this mob book, based off the mobs of Chicago, as sort of like their Bible. And
it wasn't an episode. Scarface. I guess Scarface wasn't around yet, but
no, not quite. I mean, Scarface, I think, takes place in the 80s, or 70s. But yeah. So it's
really was retcon it.
Yeah. It's an interesting,
especially since they loved watching old movies on Enterprise. I'm sure they put Scarface on every now and then. They left a copy, right?
Right. But it's interesting. So, Kirk basically decides that he is. It's hard to say if he technically breaks the Prime Directive on this. It's fuzzy if they actually changed or they interfered with their Prime Directive of this planet or the natural course of this planet, because it already was. Oh, well, there's hijinks that ensue on this planet. It's hard to say if Kirk necessarily tried to break the Prime Directive here, since the book of the Chicago Gangsters was already left on the planet. But they definitely leave the episode or this planet at the time with Kirk putting the Federation in charge of the planet and moving it away from its gangland culture. So it's hard to say if that's all on Kirk per se, but because the book was left behind.
Again, it's a Return of the Archons thing, where you've got this previous interference from Earth, happening on the planet, and so he's righting wrongs, but at the same time, like, basically annexing the planet is just like, but that's the thing. Like, with the Prime Directive, like, I know by the 24th century, they say they got these like 24 or 27 suborders, and they probably don't have that many now, but there's got to be other suborders that just are like, hey, this is okay whenever something happened. You know what I mean? So, like, these things that are violations of the Prime Directive that were going on, we're only, giving them, marks by what we know. There's so much that we don't know about the Prime Directive because of these suborders.
Right.
So it's really hard to tell. So we're just kind of going off of this based on what we do know. Right,
exactly. And it's hard to, you can't blame Kirk necessarily because of the planet was already infected with an outside idea, and they based it off that book of Chicago mobsters. But they definitely decide that they're going to try to change this planet's culture away from that as well at the end. So
yeah,
so hard to say completely if it's totally on Kirk's fault, but he's definitely interfering with the culture at the very end. Like you said, the Archons, the computers, is controlling them, and technically that's the culture, but technically it's an outside source.
I mean, it's funny. We've had three like that. We've had the Archons, we've had the Apple, and we've had a piece of the action. So it's funny how that, like, it's a very common thing, or like someone has more or less violated the Prime Directive before, or violated what will become the Prime Directive. Since they may have been before the Prime Directive was in service. So, very similar themes, and that's why I keep coming back to them. Like, it's sometimes they're fuzzier than not.
Right. Well, the next one we get is the Patterns of Force. This is the Nazi episode, and this is an interesting one. Basically, a Federation historian goes missing. And
it wasn't McGivers, was it?
No, this is the guy's name he's a Federation culture observer named John Gill, and he finds this planet in disarray, and he needs to help. He feels like he needs to help this planet with develop, and he decides the fastest way to do that is to model the Third Reich and model after Nazi Germany.
Mein Kampf for you, Mein Kampf for you. Would you like Mein Kampf?
Next, but they have this neighboring planet, Xeon, and they're planning to wipe all those people out. And
the Nazis, they kind of deserve it.
Yeah, but the Prime Directive has already been broken by this John Gill, and here we have Kirk preaching how important the Prime Directive is, and that John Gill, he couldn't have done this. He knows not to do this, and I'm like, Kirk, you've broken it a couple times already. Jesus Christ, buddy! But then we find John Gill has set himself up to be the Führer of this planet. So
that just blows me away. That someone living in this Federation's like, oh yeah, Hitler had it right.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I think that's probably more disturbing than the Prime Directive being broken.
Right.
That someone's living in this utopia, and it's like, no, I'm not going to model this culture after my culture. No. Hitler's
the way to go.
He had the good ideas.
There's always a guy out there.
Are there Jews on this planet?
Well,
Jews in space.
That's right.
The Mel Brooks film that never came out that I really wanted to see.
History of the World Part 2.
Yeah, they showed Jews in space. I really wanted to see that.
Yeah, I know. So the
Please, Mel Brooks, make it happen before you die.
The very end is Kirk makes Gil give the speech, basically renouncing everything and saying that the two planets are going to work things out and they're going to figure this out. So Kirk gives the planet a nudge. I am not sure if Kirk is necessarily, he's not to blame for the Prime Directive being broken, but he tries to nudge the planet away from Nazism.
Well, it's always good to give it a nudge. If we only nudge Donald Trump away from it.
I know, right? So it's a hard thing. It's definitely a hard thing. You can't put it totally on Kirk that he's breaking that part of their civilization and where they're heading towards. But
the Prime Directive was already broken by Gil. So I mean,
yes,
it's
right.
What Kirk does at this point, I feel like should be kind of null and void because Prime Directive is already broken. The guy is, imposing Nazism on this poor planet.
Right. And war between these two planets. So, I would say this is a no for Kirk, but obviously it's a breaking the Prime Directive, but that lands on John Gill's shoulder.
Next we have Prime Directive is definitely broken, but not by Kirk.
Next we have this is another bizarre episode, but you can't blame this on Kirk as well. This is the Omega Glory. This episode is where Kirk goes looking for the captain of the USS Exeter, Captain Ron Tracy.
So many lost captains. What the hell?
A lot of lost captains, and he uses the technologies to assist the
bells
Kroms
on their collars or something.
So Ron Tracy is down on this planet, and he uses to help the civilization called the Kroms to fight against the Yangs. And as we progress, it's this Ronald Tracy, Captain Ronald Tracy of the Exeter. He flagrantly breaks the Prime Directive because there's this disease apparently living on this planet is the only way to cure this disease. His whole crew was lost to the disease, so this Ronald Tracy was the sole surviving member of the crew. At the time, if
only he fed them to the planet killer instead.
Yeah, and
you think I don't know that?
So Kirk and McCoy and Spock all believe that they have this disease as well, and that the planet is the only reason that they're alive. So they are resigned that they might have to live on this planet for the rest of their lives, because if they beam back to the Enterprise, then they'll infect the whole Enterprise as well. So, but we find out later that this is the strange twist that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, that the Yangs and the Kroms are basically a mirror image of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and Americas, and the Yangs are actually the Yanks. And the holy words that the Yanks read from are the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And this is where Kirk reads the preamble of the Constitution because the Yangs can't read it. They can't read the proper English, and Kirk reads it out, the preamble.
Oh, so, yeah.
It's actually a very fascinating episode. But then that part at the very end, you're just like, what? Like, where did they get the Constitution from? Like, did someone just drop all this in? It's a really bizarre episode to think that this all somehow evolved just how it did.
How it did in the exact same Constitution, written the exact same way.
Exact same, would they have the flags and all the other paraphernalia of American identity. So, but it's an interesting episode. It goes in a lot of directions, and it's a fun watch. But Kirk didn't necessarily break the Prime Directive, but he does read the preamble of the Constitution, and he kind of sets them in direction of what the meaning of the Constitution is. And so he is altering the course of that civilization by giving them reading to them. By reading to them, exactly. So
there's so many things wrong with this that I don't. How did they get the Constitution?
I don't know. That's the one thing I never really explain too well.
That just doesn't make any sense. But I mean, like, if it indeed was written by someone on the planet and they've forgotten how to read, Is it really changing? It's just you're just letting them know what it says. It's like, I don't know, like the spoken written word was lost, and they never wrote it down again. They never did pictograms or anything. They just like, I don't know what these scribbles is.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, if it really was the exact same Constitution and it really was written by someone on that planet, is it breaking the Prime Directive? I don't know.
It technically is that he reads it to them. I mean, whether that helps their society whatsoever or it's forgotten in like 3 weeks, we don't know.
But if it was written on the planet, if it was, I mean, like his interpretation would be breaking it, like telling them this is what this means because this was an American. I mean, like, sure. I mean, like him interpreting it, that's breaking the Prime Directive. But him just reading it to them,
But it changes the direction of their society. I mean,
but their society wrote it supposedly.
But they can't read it for one reason or the other. Whether there was a huge nuclear war that kind of wiped out all their civilizations and all they had was the remnants of what they had there. So we don't know.
But I mean, but then again, since this is probably was it spacefaring?
No, it was not.
So that definitely breaks Part A of the Prime Directive, at least, if not Part B.
Right, exactly. So yeah, so
I would say
Mega
yes.
Glory, he broke it, although he was not the original person to break the Prime Directive.
Sure, yeah, but being there.
I mean, if you kill a hobo in a dark alley and nobody sees you and nobody can connect you, I mean, technically you're not guilty, but you did kill that person and you did break the law. So,
or if the guy just kills himself because, like, oh, what is this, a razor?
Yeah. Oh, you're talking. Exactly. It's a good point. Although that time was it wiped out? No, it was that did exist.
No, that existed. They had to kill her so that the time could be restored. So just wanted to let you know, City on the Edge of Forever is what that we're referring to. If you don't get the reference of guy, oh, is this a razor?
I mean, technically, you could count that as a interference with a culture, but it's your own culture. It's more a temporal interference.
It's definitely a temporal interference. It breaks the temporal Prime Directive. What if that guy had? I guess he wouldn't have had kids since it would have already happened somehow because of temporal mechanics.
Yeah, but he was he was just a homeless guy.
Maybe he already had kids.
Yeah. He was just a homeless guy from what I recall.
Yeah, so. But just because you're homeless doesn't mean you couldn't go on to have kids or already
Well, he was
kids.
an older homeless guy, so I don't think he was hooking up with too many
hot rods
down at the soup kitchen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Edith Keeler was pretty hot, but she had a
She was, but I don't think she was hooking up with the old guys. At least maybe she was. I don't know.
Until she met Kirk, and she's like, ooh, the young guys are kind of cute too.
Young guys are cuter than the older guys. So the next episode we have is the Paradise Syndrome. This is another bizarre episode. This is where Kirk falls into an obelisk, and he basically thinks he's an
Indian.
Part of. I'm sorry?
An Indian?
Yeah, like a Native American, and he is confused as a god. So it's not necessarily totally Kirk's fault because he loses all his memories. So you can't totally blame it on him, but he does because he's there. He is kind of at fault.
Just being there breaks the Prime Directive, since, again, this planet also doesn't have any spaceships or warp travel. This breaks Part A of the Prime Directive.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Right. So, yeah, it's a hard one to... you can't totally blame it on Kirk, but,
I mean... You can definitely blame Part A on Kirk. Part B, you kind of you can blame Part B on him because he was there on the planet because he broke the Part A.
Right. I don't know. I mean,
sure, he lost.
It could be considered like a manslaughter of Prime Directive. It's like it's not like outright murder, but it's you definitely hit somebody by accident with your car kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he was there, and he beamed down to the planet, so that's breaking Part A without a doubt.
Right, exactly. So, I mean,
and it wasn't a observation mission. Like he didn't beam down one of those mobile sheds just to spy on the people. He just beamed down on his own 2 feet, apparently with nobody else because he's the only one who gets knocked out and forgets who he is.
Right. Well. again, I don't necessarily blame it completely on him, but he technically did break the Prime Directive in this episode. So
yes,
I'm going to
say totally yes.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes too. So the next episode we have is this is one that was cited. I didn't understand the reason why this was cited. Is Whom Gods Destroy.
How it's all Federation stuff in that episode.
It is cited as one, and I cannot quite for the life of me figure out why this episode is cited as Prime Directive. Maybe that they just talked that the Prime Directive took place on this episode. I'm not necessarily certain why this was even brought up.
Are they saying maybe Garth violated the Prime Directive? Because, I mean, they just went to a penal colony. There's nothing... Right. It's a Federation penal colony. There's no outside interference to anything. Right. And they prevented Garth from beaming up. So, I mean, they killed Marta. I mean, you know, killing Marta is definitely violating the Prime Directive, because why would you let someone so beautiful die? But that's a stretch for me.
Right.
I can't think of any other way they'd be breaking the Prime Directive in this episode. Like,
I don't either.
Garth doesn't do anything crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Garth is obviously crazy, but...
I mean, he doesn't get the ship and go, like, rampage around some, you know, helpless colony.
I think it might have just mentioned it somewhere in the episode.
Like maybe Garth had done something to break the Prime Directive? Like, maybe Kirk...
I don't remember even... I don't even remember that being talked about that. So
I don't either. I just remember that it's been a while. I know we watched this episode like a year ago. Don't run off with Marta's legs, guys.
It's a great episode. But yeah, so that's a we don't know. It's cited, but I've reviewed the episode. I couldn't find anything that had anything to do with the Prime Directive. So I'm saying that's a big no, and there was nothing even had to do with the captain or crew.
I can't say this is a violation of the Prime Directive unless they just reference something. But I mean, if you're referencing something, that's not breaking the Prime Directive. You're just mentioning another time. But I don't remember them even referencing a time where the Prime Directive was broken personally. So I can't say anything. But if you guys have seen Whom Gods Destroy and you know who broke the Prime Directive, when and where, let us know. I'd really be interested in seeing that.
Yeah, I didn't get that one. And the last one we have for the original series is For the World is Howl and I Have Touched the Sky. And this is where they have like an kind of a ship that is the people society lives inside of it, and they don't really know that they are in this generational ship, and it's in a collision course with a planet.
Oh, you mean the Orville episode?
Yes. And but Kirk ends up telling them that they are on a ship, so they had no idea that they were on this generational ship. So Kirk had broken the Prime Directive for this, just basically to save their asses.
Is it breaking the Prime Directive? They're on a ship. Just because they brought out the knowledge, because they're a spacefaring people. If they're on a spaceship,
technically they have become kind of ignorant of what they are. So,
well, that's not Kirk's fault.
It's not their fault. True.
That's not Kirk's fault. It's not the Enterprise's fault. He saw a spaceship. He's like, oh, they're going to run into something if we don't change course. Let's help them. I mean, I can't. I don't. Sure, the culture inside doesn't realize it, but that's someone's fault inside the culture who didn't pass along that, hey, look, we're in a spaceship. If they've been on the ship so long that it's been bred out, that is like that now that knowledge has been bred out. Either they didn't know in the first place, or their caretakers didn't know, or all their caretakers passed away. So I don't know. I can't in good conscience call this like a breaking of the Prime Directive, because they are a spacefaring thing. He didn't alter their culture like on purpose. He's just trying to keep their cultural. I mean, I guess putting the cold fusion devices altering the culture by keeping them alive. But I mean, it's not like they just went to a planet like, hey, look, we're from space. Check it out. They're on a spaceship, for all intents and purposes. And
again, Kirk is going up against this computer that's controlling this ship. And it's got this secret history or knowledge that's been kept from the people. And just like the previous episode, the Paradise Syndrome, there's a secret knowledge that's there on this planet, yet they don't. The average person doesn't have access to it. In the end, the Enterprise and crew corrects the course so it doesn't crash into the planet. and saving them and the people of that planet they're going to crash into. But they basically give them knowledge that they're on the ship. So, I guess they meant them to be, ignorant for a reason. But I mean, Kirk definitely, he could have just. I think you could have probably changed the course of the ship without letting them know.
But that's not. I don't know. I don't think that's fair to oh look, we're just going to make the ship not crash into this asteroid, but space is infinite,
right?
And there's lots of other things you could run into in space. I mean, maybe not soon, but generations down the line, they could crash into something. I mean, if they're on a ship, there should be people manning the ship. I can't call that a clear violation of the Prime Directive because, I don't know, sure, it's sort of Part B, but they're already spacefaring. They're Part A.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they're there in space. It's not like they went to a planet and were just like, hey, look, check us out. We're from space.
Yeah. It's still the interference of it. But whatever. I would say this is a yes. Kirk is supposed to be the man in charge. He's supposed to, get things done within the parameters of his mission. And I technically think he moved outside those parameters. It's on Kirk's
outside of Part B. You mean?
Yeah, he should have kept and just moved that from crashing into that inhabited planet, saving everybody and not letting them know that they're on a generational ship.
But that's not responsible.
It's not Kirk's choice to make that decision.
That's true. But the thing is, that's the whole Prime Directive in the 23rd century. It's save lives first before you. It's like lives come before breaking the Prime Directive in most cases when you're looking at 23rd century violations of the Prime Directive. So in the greater sense, I kind of don't think he did anything wrong. Like, someone needs to drive a spaceship. That's just because. Okay, so he just changes the ship's course, and it's not going to hit that planet that it's going to hit. But what if it hits Vulcan, and a couple generations, like 16 generations? What if it hits Vulcan? What if Vulcan doesn't pay attention to it, and it just crashes into Vulcan, and it wipes out, Spock's family's home and all the people that live within, thousands of miles of it, because, something so massive hitting a planet could wipe it out. It could cause a major extinction event.
Right. Well, that's what they're looking at. That's what they're looking at right here for this episode. So
sure, but you divert it once, but diverting it once isn't going to fix it forever. It's responsible to tell the people how to fly their ships so they don't ever run into anything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I don't because that's not just. You're not just affecting the people on the ship. You're affecting, or it could just be the Nibiru. Those cavemen people, or the people in Star Trek Generations, that planet we don't ever see the people on that they're wanting to save. The ship could just run into it. It's not by telling them they're on a spaceship and telling them they need to fly their spaceships, they don't fucking kill people. It's not just. You're not interfering with them. It's not natural for the people on Vulcan to be destroyed by a spaceship because the people on the spaceship don't know they're flying a spaceship.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Or the Nibiru.
That's how the society was set up. When we get into the next episode, Next Generation, we talk about the Masterpiece Society. They're meant not to. That society was meant not to be messed with, and it's insular. And the fact that they go in and they mess with this generational ship, it's not for Kirk to do. I think the real important thing is these starship captains, can get involved in people's societies and fuck things up really fast for a society without even knowing. Look at the Chicago gangsters of the 20s, throws the whole society.
They just left a book, just one book.
Right.
Messed up a planet. But I don't know. I just feel like it's not violating the Prime Directive by telling them they're on a ship, because they need to know they're on a ship, because they could do harm to so many things by the ignorance of them being on a ship. You know what I mean? Like, if the ship wasn't doing anything, if it was orbiting a star, you know, where nothing ever would happen, that's one thing. But if it's just floating through space, just doing its thing, with no one at the controls, that's irresponsible to not tell them. So I feel like, you know, I'd give this one a wash, because especially since the 23rd century is about preserving life. He's not just preserving the life of the people on the ship, he's preserving anyone else's life that could be impacted by a ship that has no one at the helm.
Well, I mean, the computer's driving it, but it doesn't know what it's doing. Moving off of... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, if the computer's at the helm and it's going to run into other things, it's not doing its job.
Well, that's true. I did forget two episodes just to mention. I think the most important one is Private Little War. And this was a popular one for another Klingon Federation kind of standoff thing going on, a planet that's basically in its... Well, we mentioned it before in our other prior episode for Prime Directive, that Kirk had visited this planet 10 years before, and that they were in a Stone Age, and then the Klingons had gave them the flintlock rifles. So Kirk and crew go on, and they're trying to thwart the Klingons' plans with this proxy war that they're fighting.
Again, it's the whole, the enemy's already interfered. So, I mean, the enemy's already interfered. They've already blown half of what the Prime Directive is. So we just gotta, continue the war.
And Kirk decides to arm the losing side with flintlock rifles to give them a balance of power there. And it's a difficult episode for Kirk, because he doesn't want to do that. And he knows basically where it's going to go after that. It's going to escalate with the warfare. So Kirk definitely violated that Prime Directive in its way, because
Yeah, but like I said, once the Prime Directive has been broken by your enemy, even though your enemy doesn't care about the Prime Directive, I feel like that's probably where those sub rules come in. You know what I mean? Because we don't know what the sub rules are. We can kind of in our first Prime Directive episode, we kind of we had some, I think 12 instances where there's kind of sort of exceptions. This wasn't one of them, but it's gotta be one of the sub ones. If your enemy has already broken what we consider to be the Prime Directive, you are able to go in and do what you can to overthrow the enemy, just to get them out or to stop them from doing what they're doing. I feel like that's got to be somewhere in one of these sub rules for this to make sense. You know what I mean? And sure, Kirk, he's I don't know if I want to give them flintlock weapons because they make things worse, but it's already worse if they're getting the other side's getting wiped out.
Right.
It's back to the preserving life thing. The 23rd century is a way more pro life, pro preserving life, pro making things even, versus 24th century Prime Directive, where they're let them die.
Yeah, well, Kirk definitely played a little differently with these rules. And the last one I just want to bring up, I didn't bring up, is the cloud miners. This is you have a different strata of, you have a cloud people live up in the clouds, and then you have the miners that live below. The miners are abused workforce, and they're looked as these brute savages. And while the cloud people live like Lando Calrissian up in this city. Who knows? It might have been where they visited. Maybe it was Bespin.
Yeah. In
the very end, they basically get them to change their way of doing things by doing the mining themselves. And I don't know. It's it's not a flagrant Prime Directive move there or violation, but it definitely
Or the cloud people spacefaring? I don't remember this episode off the top of my head.
I think they were somewhat, but I don't know if they said they were warp capable. I don't remember that part.
So I would say at least an A break. Yeah. And if they change the politics, possibly a B break.
Yeah, that's what they did. They kind of changed, hey, stop treating those people so bad, and you can all mine. You don't just live up in those cities by yourselves, let all those guys do all that work for you. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's definitely something going on there. So,
yeah, I would agree. That's a break.
The issue with the original series is the Prime Directive isn't totally hammered out.
No, not at all. And I feel like the first season of TNG, Gene Roddenberry is really trying to here, let's give the Prime Directive a lot of focus.
Right. He does give a lot of focus, and he defines it more, and almost to a crippling amount of what the Prime Directive, what's allowed and what's not allowed. Where in the original series, it's sort of a guideline, but Kirk just throws out the window when he feels like he needs to, so.
Yeah, and then like we also said, there's also a couple times where Federation Council was like, this is your orders. So that's at that point, I feel like it's questionable whether the Prime Directive is over your orders or not. It's obviously not, because they have to follow their orders. Yeah,
and that's when Kirk or any captain has to just go, okay, well, that's my orders, and I have to listen to whatever they say. So you got to give the original series a bit of a pass. You can't be too hard on it, and a lot of it is like the Patterns of Force, which is the Nazi episode, and like the gangster episodes, and even Miri. These are all just costumes and set designs that they could utilize because they had other TV shows going on at the same time. And they could use those costumes and those set designs, and it was cheaper for them to do that. So they could write an episode based off Nazis, they could off gangsters or that kind of thing. So while it's creative, it's just a cheap way of doing TV. So
yeah, I mean you do got to give it a pass, which is why I was trying to be fair. I'm like, oh, if that's what I'm saying. Like if other people broke their Prime Directive first, if they're already aware of aliens, then you kind of can't hold them to it. So right. I was trying to give TOS as much of a pass as I could.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. You got to give TOS a bit of a pass because the Prime Directive isn't that well defined. But there are times when Kirk definitely just goes right against. I mean, like the Apple being one of them.
But the thing is, I feel like Apple falls under the same thing as Return of the Archons.
Yeah, but the Apple is even worse because he brings up the Prime Directive and he just throws it out the window. So why even bring it up? So
that's true. I mean, he definitely broke it by being there. But he's trying to set but he wouldn't be able to set them on the right way if he didn't go there in the first place.
Right.
That's just part of the reason which makes the Prime Directive so hard, so difficult to talk about, because it's public relations and this other thing.
Yeah, right.
It's like, do we go on the planet at all or not? And
right.
and if you follow the letter, don't go to this planet if they're not warp capable, then he's breaking it all the time. But the intro of Star Trek is like, seek out new life and new civilizations. So I feel like the Prime Directive and like the opening, the monologue for Star Trek are at odds to each other.
Yeah,
they're contradictory statements. It's like, oh, we're going to go out and find this new life and new civilizations, and so this is cool, and it doesn't matter what they are. But then the Prime Directive says, no, you can't do that. But
right, exactly.
It's such a oxymoron, really, where it's like, go ahead and do this, but then the rules say not to.
Right.
And so Star Trek it gives you a mix of both. They're seeking out new life and civilizations, and then they have to throw out their morals and say, hey, look, well, we're not supposed to do this, but we're going to do it anyway because if we left it would be worse.
Yeah, and that's where Kirk sits in as the moral authority, for better or worse. And he's like, you people can't live like this. You can't live under Nazi rule. And he goes into
please help us, Kirk.
Yeah, he moves into action. I mean, other than like the Paradise Syndrome, where he is confused as a god, you can't really blame him for that because he couldn't remember who he was.
But he shouldn't have been there in the first place, so we can blame him for that.
Mm-hmm.
I see where you're coming from too. So it's really lots of things are kind of washy in TOS.
Right. But
it can be harder on TNG because
TNG
is where they really start to flesh out the rules.
Yeah, and we can get a lot harder because it's far more defined. and it all of a sudden seems way more important. So, so in our next Prime Directive episode, we will get harder into TNG, and we'll go through all those as fast as possible. But if you have a different view of any of this, definitely let us know by chiming in on our Synthaholics group on Facebook, or just emailing us at synthaholics@yahoo.com. We would love to hear what your take on, especially the original series, Prime Directive, whether Kirk messed up or if he didn't mess up, or if you had a different take of what the Prime Directive means.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Like, if you guys have any disputes with us, let us know in the Facebook group or in the email, and we can maybe bring it up on the next episode to kind of start off with, and then we can jump into TNG.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you.
All our music is by Warp 11, except the intro, which is by Dave Wilkes. You can find Warp 11 at warp11.com or on Twitter at Warp 11. This show you can find at synthaholics.com. You can find it at youtube.com/synthaholics, or there's also weekly cocktail videos and other videos that we've been doing. Lately it's been Discovery, and we've got some new stuff coming hopefully soon, so check that out as well. iTunes and Stitcher, please rate and review, especially on iTunes, because that's where the algorithm generates everything. So reviews and stars on there will be so much appreciated. Help us out so very much.
Absolutely. And if you have any money you could throw our way, please go down to Patreon.com/Synthaholics. A little bit of money helps us run our podcast a little easier by offsetting the expense of running the website and all the other equipment costs that sometimes pop up, right, Dave?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a couple of weeks ago we had that sound issue where I sound like a tin can because I was using a crappy headset, and I bought 2 new pieces to get us back to the crisp sound that you're used to. So, I mean, it definitely helps us out so very much. So, anything you can do with that, or, even just word of mouth, that is huge help. Like, spreading the show, because we don't really do any advertising other than just we share in different Facebook groups, and then I get blocked on Facebook. So, I keep taking hits on a bi-weekly basis, and I'm on another hit right now. So, if you guys take it upon yourselves to share it to groups and share it to your friends, and tell them, at work, at church, or whatever, it's like, hey, this is a great podcast I listen to. Go tell your friends, tell your family who are into podcasts, who are into something a little bit on the silly side, but don't mind some good Star Trek discussion. So just word of mouth would help us out so very much.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that for sure.
All right, well, thank you so much for listening. This has been Prime Directive Part 2, TOS. Next time we'll get into TNG, and then we'll probably get into the TNG movies and DS9, and then Voyager might even have to be a 2-parter, because...
Yeah, there's a lot of Voyager.
Spoiler alert, Voyager's probably the one that's break the Prime Directive the most. So this could be a multi-part series. So
yeah,
so stay tuned. We might even have a fun diversion in the middle of the Prime Directive in case you get tired of the rules.
All these rules and regulations.
Absolutely. So we'll let you know more about that as it comes. So thank you so much for listening. Live long and prosper, one and all.
Come mix me a drink before the night's over. I'll puke in the sink and we'll cry till we laugh, and we'll both shit our pants. You're the best drinking friend I ever had.
I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna get you one.
All right.